It's 2003, the year 50 Cent dropped Get Rich or Die Trying, Need for Speed Underground came out, and shout out to X2 and the homie Nightcrawler. Meanwhile in the WWE, well, it was the middle of the Ruthless Aggression era. What a time it was to be alive. You had new and rising talents ready to take over the world. You had Attitude Era stars continuing their amazing careers, and of course you had legends. The roster was absolutely stacked. I mean, that's one of the main reasons we love Smackdown Here Comes the Pain so much. Brand split in full effect, and that year's WrestleMania is one of the greatest of all time. This WrestleMania has always been so fascinating to me. You had Kurt Angle putting his career and health on the line by wrestling. Brock Lesnar almost broke his neck doing this. Stone Cold, who spent the night before in a hospital, still wrestled. You had Hogan and Vince at the combined age of 108 years old just killing each other. And of course, you had the return to WrestleMania of Mr. WrestleMania himself. It was a crazy and wild night, but without a doubt, it is definitely a top 5 WrestleMania of all time. Let's get into it. Going into WrestleMania 19, the company looked and felt so different than 02 and 01. The Attitude Era was over and now there was a brand split, so wrestlers were exclusive to either Raw or SmackDown. The two biggest stars in wrestling, Austin and Rock, were slowly easing it down and were on the way out. So many new faces and the vibes were just different going into WrestleMania 19. There was no crazy dream match here, instead we just got quality from top to bottom. So, live from Seattle, Washington, Safeco Field, one of the most beautiful and unique WrestleMania setups ever. 54,000 in attendance, WrestleMania 19 was simply legendary. To start things off, you have Matt Hardy version 1 versus Rey Mysterio in the Daredevil costume, and they held it down for the SmackDown Cruiserweight division. This was also the night that Limp Bizkit was announced as the WWE's favorite band in the world. Should have been Evanescence, but whatever. As good as this Mania was, we got one of the worst Undertaker streak matches ever. Taker deserved so much better. But it's okay, dead man, you'll get your classic soon enough, just hold tight. The late 02 and 03 Raw women's division was so good, and here we got Victoria versus Jazz versus Trish Stratus, my childhood crush. And it was awesome seeing Trish go from being eye candy, Vince McMahon's side chick at WrestleMania 17 to women's title contender at WrestleMania 18, and now at WrestleMania 19, women's champion. Trish Stratus, the GOAT. But then we got a show stealer from none other than the showstopper, the icon, the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, who took on the first ever undisputed champion, the man who beat Rock and Austin on the same night, Y2J Chris Jericho. And this was just something special. You had Shawn Michaels, Mr. WrestleMania, make his return to WrestleMania. He hadn't been on the card since 1998, and he was back with a vengeance to prove to the world why they called him Mr. WrestleMania. And then you had Chris Jericho. Now what was so cool about this was, it was Jericho about to wrestle his idol at WrestleMania, wrestling the man who we wanted to be like on the biggest show. It was basically Kobe versus Jordan at the All-Star game. The storyline going in was Y2J wanted to end HBK's career, and it wasn't going to be the last time either. He wanted to prove that he was superior than Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, that Shawn was washed and that the future was now, old man. I stopped trying to be the next Shawn Michaels and started being the first Chris Jericho. Jericho did everything he could to get a match against HBK. Attacks from behind, assault with chairs, even eliminating him from the Royal Rumble, and finally, Shawn accepted, and here we were, showstopper versus highlight of the night. And of course, these two tore Safeco Field down like they were Ichiro Suzuki in his prime. An all-time classic, Mr. WrestleMania was back, and Y2J got his WrestleMania classic that he wanted so bad the year before. Take this in, this match stole the show on a card that had Austin versus Rock and Brock versus Angle. We got some amazing wrestling and storytelling and drama. If someone tells me that this is their favorite wrestling match of all time, I won't argue with them, I can see it. HBK was pulling out dives, and at one point outside, Jericho caught HBK's dropkick into a Walls of Jericho, and he held onto it for an 8 count. He could have easily won there and walked back to the ring and won with a count out, but he was too proud to be his idol with a count out. He really wanted to prove that he was better than Shawn Michaels. Jericho was out here destroying his idol, flexing to the crowd, but Shawn just wouldn't stay down. One of my favorite sequences from any WrestleMania match was when Jericho hit Shawn with the flying forearm, and then did the iconic HBK kip up to taunt HBK, showing that anything you can do, I can do better. Just for Shawn to do his own kip up and stand right behind Jericho and begin to clap him. It was just a back and forth classic. Jericho even tuned up the band and hit Shawn with a sweet chin music. but it still wasn't enough. For 24 minutes, we just got awesomeness, and HBK finally won with a cradle out of nowhere. Jericho spent all that time being cocky, copying HBK just to get outsmarted and lose to a cradle. It was such great storytelling of student versus teacher, and the old man still had it in him. So the match is over, and everyone is standing, giving them an ovation, and they earned it. What a match. And you have Shawn Michaels, who sticks out his hand for Jericho to shake it. Jericho's looking at him, looking at the crowd. What does he do? Jericho just hugs him, and what a moment, the crowd is loving it. Jericho earned the respect of his idol. But then he hit him with a low blow and HBK just falls down in front of him. And the crowd goes absolutely nuts. HBK is on his knees, not looking like a winner at all, and Jericho is just standing above him, pushes him down, and Jericho gets the last laugh. Mr. WrestleMania was back, and Jericho finally got his WrestleMania moment. Legendary. What wasn't legendary here though was Booker T not winning the world title from Triple H. Triple H's reign of terror was in full effect. This has been discussed to death. Everybody and their mom knows that Booker T should have won. You simply don't do a build like the one they did to not have the face win, to not have Booker win. Even if he just won and kept the title for a month or two, it would have been fine. Would have been much better than the Kevin Nash program. Booker T never got a rematch. He lost clean, and Triple H took 20 seconds to pin him for no reason. Disappointing. Since most of you guys already know what went on here and you know the story, I won't really bore you guys to death with it, but in case you didn't know, there's an article in the description that will explain everything to you. There is just something about Vince McMahon and street fights at WrestleMania. We don't talk about the Bret Hart one. 2 years after getting banged in by his son, Shane, it was time for Hulkamania to run wild. Vince versus Hogan in a street fight. Combined age of 108 years old, but who the hell cares? And yo, these old geezers just went wild. Vince McMahon is an all-time great performer. Just Google Vince McMahon gifts and you got pages on pages of entertainment. And he was up against Hogan, who could work a crowd like no other. It was all about who created WrestleMania. Who made WrestleMania into what it was. The owner of the company or the man who headlined the first 8. In the build-up, Vince was wiling. I created Hulkamania. I'm gonna kill it. I created you and you turned your back on me. You walked out on me. You testified against me for the federal government and tried to put me in jail. He hated Hogan. Can you really blame him though? So he brought back The Rock from Hollywood just so he could whip Hogan's bald candy ass one more time. He would assault Hogan with chair shots, make him bleed. He even signed the contract for the match with Hogan's blood. And these old men killed it. Hogan was jacked, Vince was jacked, and there was so much oil, oh my god, and so much violence. For the first few minutes, we got nothing but kicks, punches, and elbows. But once they went outside, yo, they tweaked. They started hitting barricades and posts and chair shots to the head. Vince was bleeding, more chair shots. The Spanish announcer was bleeding. Hogan was bleeding. At that point, I was bleeding. And then something happened that I never thought I would see in a Vince McMahon match. Like, I don't think anyone ever predicted this to happen. Vince pulled out a ladder. Yes, Vince McMahon and not Jeff Hardy. And he places Hogan on the announce table, climbs up the ladder, taunts Hogan, and does a flying leg drop off the top of a ladder through the announce table. To this day, my brain can't comprehend that this happened. Vince McMahon jumped off a ladder through the announce table. I thought this was something you would only see in a video game, but no, it happened. When I saw this as a kid, I was just like, wow. And 17 years later, I still just go wow. We then got one of the greatest camera shots in wrestling history. So Bloody Vince rising from the ground after getting a lead pipe from under the ring, straight out of a horror movie. I don't see how anyone could hate this match. You had Rowdy Piper interfere, and after teasing to hit Vince, he drills Hogan in the head with a steel pipe. It was only right. Vince hit a leg drop, and of course, Hulk hulked up. Listen, for what it was, this was amazing. For lack of a better term, you had two old men just YOLOing it. They went 21 minutes, respect to them. Hogan hit Vince for a leg drop 3 times. I can't help but laugh at this. Not because it was bad, it wasn't. It's just so outrageous. I love wrestling. To make it even better, after Vince loses, poor Shane had to come out and collect his father, and Hogan's just pointing at the mess of Vince saying, "Here you go, son." Imagine if Vince won this match. That would have been hilarious. It actually would have been my favorite wrestling match of all time at that point if Vince won. And then you had Rock vs. Austin 3, last time ever, the grand finale, the end of the trilogy of one of the greatest feuds of all time, and what ended up being Stone Cold Steve Austin's last match. ever. This was just special to me because The Rock is in my top 3 all time and Hollywood Rock was just the GOAT. This man came back salty as ever that he got booed at last year's Mania. Fans were yelling at him that he sold out because he went to Hollywood, so he basically asked the crowd, hey, is this what you want? You want me to be a heel? And they responded, and it was written. Rock became the most electrifying heel in sports entertainment. He cut one of the best promos of all time in Toronto, the same place he got booed in last year. He was just so cocky and just so elite at being a heel. The same man who would never back down from a fight was backing down from Hogan and Austin, cheap shotting them. This man rolled out of a battle royal and went to do commentary. We had the Rock concert, which was awesome, and his legendary feud with the Hurricane. The Rock had done it all in sports entertainment. He was done. He was going to Hollywood and gonna go conquer that. But before he left, there was one thing he wanted to do. And that was finally beat that bald-headed redneck at WrestleMania. Austin hadn't had a real match since June of 2002, but he wanted the hat trick. He wanted to finish the rivalry with the 3-0 sweep. It was so simple, but so awesome. Heel Rock versus face Austin. Just how it started in WrestleMania 15 and just how it's going to end. What makes this crazier is that Austin spent the night before in the hospital. On Saturday afternoon, Austin stepped off the elevator at his hotel and legitimately believed he was having a heart attack. He spent the night in the hospital for exhaustion, dehydration, and excessive caffeine intake. And according to Dave Meltzer, there was a real good chance that he would actually miss the match. But here he was, ready to wrestle. He knew it was going to be his last match. He decided that. He was nervous, the anxiety got to him, he was having a panic attack, but he still went out there and went one-on-one with the Great One. Austin knew it was going to be his last match, but the fans didn't. The Rock was going to go back to Hollywood after another month or so this was it. The last hurrah, and it was beautiful. If Hollywood has taught me anything, it's that Act 1 and Act 2, they don't matter. The only thing that matters, everyone remembers, Act 3, the conclusion, the climax, the grand finale. I love this match, and ladies and gentlemen, here is a wrestling photo that is in my top 3 favorite wrestling photos of all time. It's beautiful. Now, I'm not saying this was as good as WrestleMania 17, but man, it's the damn Rock versus Austin. It was still magic. Austin, neck problems and all, after being in the hospital the night before, went out there and did everything he could. The Rock was The Rock and was so awesome as a heel. I loved how Rock was beating up Austin, goes outside, puts on Austin's vest, grabs a bottle of water, takes a sip, goes back in there to beat up Austin even more. They did all their signature spots. Sharpshooters, stomping mud holes. I just loved seeing Austin get rock bottomed while The Rock was wearing Austin's vest, and they did all their WrestleMania 17 spots again with The Rock doing the stunner and Austin doing the rock bottom, but who cares? Like I said, it was the last hurrah. Austin kicked out of the people's elbow and had the fans going absolutely insane. Austin went 19 minutes after spending the night before in the hospital. It took 3 rock bottoms, but finally The Rock beat Austin at WrestleMania. There are very few wrestlers who went out with an all-time great match like Austin. What a way to end a career. 2 of the very best went at it 3 times on the biggest stage and never disappointed. Rock knew it was Austin's last match, so after the match, him and Austin shared some words. Rock tugged his family and walked away, and then Austin was left alone for the crowd to cheer. If only they knew it was his last match. Back at WrestleMania 14, Jim Ross had the iconic line, "Austin era has just begun." And tonight, the Austin era finally ended. It's almost impossible for me to put into words how much Steve Austin meant to wrestling, but you guys know. So comment down below, what is your favorite Steve Austin match of all time? And we still had one more match. Lesnar versus Angle, an Olympic gold medalist versus NCAA champion. 2 of the greatest athletes to ever step into the world of professional wrestling going at it in the main events of WrestleMania. You didn't need a wild storyline to build this up, it was just something that was always there. Since the day Lesnar stepped onto the scene, it was like, man, him and Angle would tear it up, and it was their time to shine. There was one issue though. Kurt Angle had a number of serious neck and spinal issues that required immediate surgery. Vince McMahon even tried to talk him out of wrestling, but he went ahead with the match anyways. Kurt Angle was out here risking his career and his health for this. That's how much the WrestleMania main event meant to him. One bad bump and Kurt could be paralyzed. They were playing with fire. Lesnar versus Angle face to face. So you know Angle has neck issues and they're probably going to take this easy, have a quick match and just get it over with. But no, suplexes, power slam, press slams, everything you could imagine, they did it. And Kurt Angle was out here trying to have the match of the year. Just a fantastic wrestling match. Angle at one point did 4 German suplexes back to back. My neck just hurts just thinking about it. They just kept going and going and going, and they really proved that these are the best pure athletes that wrestling has ever seen. Kurt Angle was literally risking it all. And imagine how Brock Lesnar felt. You're wrestling this man and you can't mess up. Like, you can't do anything wrong, and hell, you can do everything right and he could still get seriously injured for the rest of his life. It's insane. Kurt Angle just had it, that Mamba mentality, whatever you want to call it, that passion, that hunger for more, the hunger to win. You don't win a gold medal at the Olympics with a broken neck if you don't have it. You just have to be a different breed to be a level of an athlete that Kurt Angle was. And this just proved it, that he was willing to risk it all for the main event of WrestleMania. However, I still don't think he should have been allowed to wrestle. For 19 minutes, it was a wrestling war and Angle kicked out of the F5. According to Cole, he was the first person to ever do that. Lesnar eventually hit him with the second F5, and it was going to happen. The moment that everybody remembers from WrestleMania 19, the moment that everybody remembers from this match, one of the craziest, wildest, and most infamous moments in wrestling history. Kurt Angle was halfway across the ring. Lesnar, instead of pinning him, begins to go to the top rope. Yes, Brock Lesnar on the top rope. And we all know what happens next. And Brock Lesnar takes flight. A shooting star press from Brock Lesnar. What a visual. A man of that size flying through the air. WrestleMania main event. Cameras going off. Flash bulbs. Lesnar is doing a flip in mid-air at almost 300 pounds. There's your WrestleMania moment, kid. Make yourself a legend. And bang. He lands on his neck. Kurt Angle described it the best. It was supposed to be the greatest moment in WrestleMania history. He was supposed to finish me with that move, but he nearly finished himself. One man was one bad bump away from breaking his neck and risking paralysis. The other probably just did. Brock Lesnar slipped off the rope, under-rotated, and bang. Somehow, someway, he didn't break his neck, but he did have a concussion and Brock Lesnar was out like a light. Here's what Angle said. He was out of it. He just had this blank stare. Didn't know where he was. I said, Brock, talk to me. He said, yeah. That's all I heard him say. I just tried talking him through it and told him what to do next. He wasn't hearing me at all. He was out. And I thought we're in trouble. The main event of WrestleMania, the biggest show of the year, and this is happening. Kurt Angle pins him, and somehow Brock Lesnar gets his arm up and kicks out. Unbelievable. They slowly both get up, and somehow Brock Lesnar just gets this wind of speed and hits Angle with an F5. 1, 2, 3. Brock Lesnar won. Absolutely insane. It was an amazing match, one of the best of all time, but that ending, it's just crazy to watch it again and to see it happening. It's even crazier seeing Lesnar after the match, and you can just tell, yeah, he's gone. Lesnar was sitting down and he just had this stare. He just had this look in his face like he didn't know what was happening. I remember hugging him at that particular moment and saying, "Are you okay?" And nobody was there, just the stare that was going behind me. And I thought, oh my god, he might just have a concussion, or he might have knocked himself loopy for good. They literally went out there and risked their lives. Here's what Flair had to say about it. Thank God he had all those years doing neck bridges in amateur wrestling. It would have killed a regular guy. Angle and Lesnar were standing and they hugged it out and the show ended. It was a miracle that Brock Lesnar didn't break his neck, and it was a miracle that Angle's injury didn't get any worse. After the match, Angle was barely able to lift his arms over his head and he proceeded to go into a shock. But remember guys, apparently wrestling is fake. What a show. Rock versus Austin, HBK versus Jericho, Hogan and Vince, and Brock versus Angle. An all-time classic, without a doubt one of the greatest WrestleManias ever. I love this era of WWE. I've replayed these matches countless times on Smackdown, Here Comes the Pain, so this will always be special to me. Shows like this are why we love WrestleMania. Shows like this are why it's the grandest stage of them all. You had so much going on. Rock versus Austin for the last time ever. Stone Cold Steve Austin's last wrestling match of his career. The return of Mr. WrestleMania, Hogan versus Vince. And Brock and Angle risking their lives for our entertainment. To simply put it, shows like this are why we love wrestling.